This is Rahm Emanuel that we didn't get a chance to listen to. But this is the Wall Street Journal in 2008. Okay, this is 2008, and he's talking about shaping the new agenda. So a new agenda for the new world order. So let's see if we can hear this real quick.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before. I think America as a whole in 1973 and 1974, and not just my view, but obviously the administration, missed the opportunity to deal with the energy crisis that was before us. For a long time, our entire energy policy came down to cheap oil. This is an opportunity. What used to be long-term problems, be they in the healthcare area, energy area, education area, fiscal area, tax area.
I mean, I gotta stop it, dude, real quick.
Area, yeah.
I gotta stop it real quick because it's like insane. Like right off the bat, he's talking about. I mean, think about this blood-sucking, greedy opportunist that's just like a predator. This is why we call these people the predator class, because they take advantage, and this is a perfect example of how they take advantage of a crisis that they create. See, they don't want you to know that these are the people that create the crisis. They don't want you to know that, that are the ones that implode the economy by design and cause businesses to fail by design and created the wars all through history, by design, by funding both sides of the wars and, just causing the bloodshed, because these people are bloodletting demons that thirst for blood. I mean, like literally, dude.
Totally, dude.
Like Madonna. I mean, okay, so, but yeah, I don't want to go through the rest of the video, but I'm just trying to show the fact that this is just one example of somebody in a position of authority in our government, and it's a revolving door, so they just go to their corporations and then go back into government and back and forth.
Right.
But this guy right here, I mean, is using the language. It is a cult, and that's why they all say the same thing: never let a good crisis go to waste, because it is a cult that they're in, and they basically all say the same thing because that's just the nature of this cult, man. They all the same kind of language because they're all and drinking from the same cup,
right?
Basically is what I'm trying to say. But but it's pretty amazing, and so I mean, in this kind of system, like there's gonna be continual crises. And that's like what people don't understand is people have wishful thinking and think, oh, these things are going to go away and the government just doesn't know how to solve these problems. And they're just so stupid. They don't know how to solve these problems. It's not the case. Like this is by design. Like they have well planned out the implosion. Right. Okay. That's of everything. That's what I'm trying to say, to bring in their new system.
Right. I see that a lot. I see like people in the independent media or whatever, like acting like, well, government is so incompetent, and that's why that's why we have this virus spread so bad or whatever, because the CDC and the government is so incompetent. They're not incompetent. It's purposefully done to make sure they maximize the chaos,
Yeah, like Winston Churchill. Here's another example, if you can see it. And this was published in February 25th, 2016. That's when it was published, but by Andrew Lowe, and he's calling for never let a good crisis go to waste, as said by Winston Churchill. Never waste a good crisis. So, I mean, all these cult members say the same thing, and it's because there is a worldwide push for a new world order, which means simply put, a worldwide dictatorship run by, groups like the UN and so on, like, because we've shown, like, and this article right here, The Coming New World Order, if you can see, really lays out the different institutions and groups, the roundtable groups, like who are the players in the one world government. Joe, should I just read this real quick?
Go for it. Yeah.
This is like, it says, who are the players in the one world government? Okay, and we should probably know this, dude. I mean, it's better than watching football. I'm telling you right now. I mean, when they're coming for like your everything, they're coming for everything. And many people have warned, like in the past, like, you know what I mean, Joe? Like we've been trying to tell people this for like probably like 15, 20 years, like probably, I mean, just
Right.
different elements and aspects of this that we've seen being implemented, especially in the churches, like the modern 501c3 nonprofit cults called churches in America that are leading people straight to hell, basically. So, I mean, and it's just sad because we tried to resist, we tried to oppose it, the setting up of Homeland Security in the churches and FEMA, and the spying on the local community and the gaslighting tactics that these members of these churches use on innocent civilians that have been profile policed.
Mm-hmm.
And literally like are deployed. These agents or community-based agents, they call them, because they get a name. They get their name and they get their little badge. Because, I mean, it's literally like those experiments that were done in that prison. Do you remember where those prison guards acted as the prison guards and then they had the prisoners?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I can't remember. I don't remember the name of the study,
I
but
don't remember either. I know what you're
but
talking
yeah,
about.
you know what I'm talking about, where they submitted to authority, no matter what the instruction was coming from the authority, no matter how immoral it was.
Right.
They still followed through with orders.
Right.
You know, so that's just a history lesson right there, a little study right there. But okay, so it says there are a number of organizations that comprise the invisible government. Now, I think it's funny right off the bat that the invisible government is probably, responsible for releasing a virus, if there is a virus. And yet, Trump talks about fighting this invisible war. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like the invisible government releases an invisible virus and we're made to fight an invisible war.
Right.
So, I mean, literally, this is all illusion by the enemy and all deception designed to just totally destroy your soul, basically, in the end, with their Hegelian dialectic of taking two opposing sides, two opposing ideas, two opposing forces, and constantly clashing them off against each other in order to have them, as the government, come in and be the arbitrator and the manager that provides the solution. But I'm sorry, I won't keep interrupting, but the government that runs America, the invisible government, and the world from behind the scenes. So the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, was founded in July 29th, 1921 in New York City by Colonel Edwards Mandell House. And and it says that he's Jewish, but I'm going to say falsely called a Jew or impersonating or posing as a Jew. Right. Chief advisor to President Woodrow Wilson in league with stockholders of the Federal Reserve Bank and communist, Haas was part of the conspiracy to gain control of both U.S. political parties to use them as instruments in the creation of a communist world government. So the roster of almost 3,000 Council on Foreign Relations members reads like a who's who of the elite politicians, media, financiers, businessmen, military, and educators. So I wanted to just point that out, that those are the prawns. Like that's who's engaged and involved in our destruction, who's going along with the depopulation agenda and the artificial scarcity and withholding and pulling up the ladder, basically pulling up the ladder and letting all the civilians fight amongst themselves is what's going down when these companies withhold products and, stop and create these. A lot of the time, what I'm seeing is these artificial supply chain interruptions that don't really need to be interrupted, is what I'm saying, that could still come and be supplied to the store. But there's an agenda. And that's why I'm saying that I don't think that they're going to open back up the stores. And they're even talking about not paying the rent. And it's escalating. I'm saying not just people renting from apartment complexes not wanting to pay the rent, but now companies are not wanting to pay the rent. So this is going to spiral out of control. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that people should worry more about the economic impact and less about the virus, is what I'm saying, because, I mean, it's going to get crazy.
That's what I've been saying all along, is it's these quarantines and the effect on the economy. That's really the thing to be watching, and that's way more scary than the virus itself. I mean, Joe, we're dealing with, like, I just want people to know, because I've dealt with them for the last 20 years pretty much in this fight, and ever since I came to Christ,
And it's like, we're dealing with like literal psychopathic, narcissistic, pathological narcissistic psychopaths by definition.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, they feel like they'll manage the money, the land, the food, everything. They're entitled to do so. And like, we didn't vote them. We didn't ask for it. We didn't ask to be saved or protected or any of the stuff that they posture and just insert themselves. And, you know, the government in communism, that's the way it rolls. In order for the government to get involved in the common, everyday, average citizen's life, they have to create the crisis and then get engaged and get involved, forcing you to have to go to them, forcing you to have to be beholden to them as they implode and sabotage every other resource and every other way out. You know, and this is why I liken what's happening worldwide to the gang stalking programs, because it's the same thing. They sabotage your resources, sabotage your property so that you have no other way to maneuver. And then you're under their abuse and under their stimulus and you can't get away. And that's what creates the mass shooters. That's what creates the people that are, you know, you see in the news where they just have some patsy or some lone nut that you know think is losing their mind. That's not the case. We have to start thinking as Americans like that's not really the case. Like these people are being tortured and harassed and tortured with military style torture tactics. I mean, and we've shown before that the NDAA in 2012 that Obama passed legalizes torture of American citizens, and the criteria in order to qualify to be tortured really involves nothing. They can just profile you and put you on a watch list is what we're saying. Right, Joe?
Exactly. And again, going back to that bill that Trump passed about the anti-Semitism and the whole idea of, you know, it comes down to racial type wars and stuff like this. This is why they bring those kind of things up, so they can call you a racist, or so they can classify, so they can, you know, profile you as whatever they want, you know, whatever they want to portray in order to torture you and to put you into these type of situations.
That's right. And, you know, they can call you a person of interest.
Yeah.
And that just means they don't even have to, because you're not guilty of a crime. And that's why they call you a person of interest. And then they can just take away your rights under the Patriot Act, as we've shown, and under NDAA. And they've just put the laws in place, folks, to just be able to totally aggressively go after whoever they label and whoever they, and that's common in communistic countries. And Americans have to get wise to this, that it's common. I mean, it's just very common. The way that what I'm seeing is just the influence of the world government increasing its sphere of power and influence. And like that's why I'm seeing like America is a dictatorship now. Mm-hmm. And it's run through the executive branch, and we're all being tortured and cut off from the markets and cut off from, you know, resources. And that's designed to bring us to our knees. Like, this isn't over. This is just beginning, like with the virus. I mean, this is just beginning. Like, it's not going to come back like it was. And I hate to say it. I don't like to say it. Mm-hmm. But even after 9/11, you have to ask yourself, like, even after 9/11, did they every year, you know, they had an opportunity to take away the Patriot Act. Mm-hmm. But did they take away the Patriot Act? They said that foreign Muslims who were terrorists attacked our country because they were jealous of America being so wealthy and America, you know, having freedom. Okay, that's what Bush said, that they attacked us because they were mad that we had freedom. Okay, and so then they come and take away our rights to protect us from the terrorist boogeyman that they created.
Does that make it? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And that's why, like, many of us are targeted in America, because we sit here and talk about these things because, you know, we're experiencing the repercussions of being asleep, of not asserting yourself and being asleep, and just, you know, while we slept and watch football, like while we do that, I'm just saying, and I'm not against sports or anything, but it's like when that becomes like an obsession, and like everything in America becomes an obsession, and that's like what people do. They just get together, they get drunk and watch football.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying there's more to life, especially when we're under this warfare. There's a time for everything. But like if your time is like disproportional, you know what I mean, and you're under attack, I mean, many people just don't want to know the truth because it makes them responsible, and then they have to do something about it. And that's the problem. People don't want to have to do something about it, you know, about the situation. So, but anyways, this, I'm not going to read all this, but this is just shows the groups that are involved. And you've heard about the Bilderberg group before, meeting in Holland in 1954 was their first meeting. And these are the movers and shakers and the big titans of the world that are forming and have formed this world government and have called for a new world order and implement. So these are the roundtable groups like the Bilderberg group. They come alongside our government and they basically say to the Council on Foreign Relations, hey, this is the new policy and the agenda for the year to implement the new world order. And basically the Council on Foreign Relations, you know, has so many members from our government involved that go to the meetings, and they just implement that agenda down into our government. And they do this worldwide, and they do this with all the countries in Europe, every country.
Right.
And the reason, you know, the Middle East has been under such attack because the centralized European banking system doesn't have complete control over the currencies there. You know what I mean? They can't control the country. That's one of the many reasons. But the Club of Rome, the United Nations, including the World Health Organization, and I just wanted to read this, the vehicle through which these various organizations described above will rule the world is the United Nations. It too has a visible government that is the facade for the people. It is ruled from behind the scenes by these various organizations, all of which are untimely or ultimately controlled by the Jews. But this guy is coming from the approach that it's controlled by the Jews. But I just wanted to say I don't totally agree with the way he's putting it, because Jesus talks about, you know, in the book of Revelation, those that pose as Jews but are not.
Yeah.
Well,
and again, it comes back to that, you know, they'll classify themselves under this, then they'll pass anti-Semitic laws in order to protect themselves. So you can't say anything about, you know, you can't talk about them because then you're an anti-Semite and they're Jews. So, you know, you're just, they create this racist war that never even, you know, it's totally made up by them. So
that's the way they silence us. That's the way they silence us, and that's the way they keep us from helping others to know the truth, so that these predators can keep victimizing people and continue to have their prey, basically, because they're predators. Mm-hmm. And they rejoice once the camera stops rolling, or if they think they're off camera. We've seen them before bragging about taking and slaughtering the cattle, you know, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They look at us as if we're just their objects to do whatever they want with, and they feel like disposing of many of us. And it's not sensationalism to say, here's their plan, and it's been around for years. Like, the information is there. Behold a pale horse. Like, you can read about it in so many different forms, so many different ways. To not see what's going on is complete blindness. If you want to be taken from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis by a bunch of psychopathic narcissists, I mean, have at it. But like, I don't. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to be on the merry-go-round of a bunch of psychopaths.
Yeah.
Really. And like that, and the satanic element to communism is very present in America. It's very present. Like the hatred for Christianity, getting rid of, you know, the 10 Commandments, the whole process along the years where it's been, I mean, really, I was listening to a video, you know, I'm not into David Icke, really. I don't like David Icke or anything, but he calls it the tiptoe, or the totalitarian tiptoe. because that's the way this is being set up. It's like the frog in the pot. It's over a period of time. It's slow rollout as they take more of our rights and subject us.
Right.
You know.
Right. Right.
But I wanted to cover this too, Joe. Look, this says world and national leaders point the way. Would you read this, Joe, since my voice is going out? You don't have to read and cover the fact that they're Jews. I mean, look, I'm not against the Jews, okay? I just want people to know that. Like, I'm not,
right.
And I'm not bringing attention to this for that reason. I know many people out there will probably just, they don't think deeper than just the brainwash level. But, and I'm not claiming I know everything. I'm just, I'm not holier than thou, in other words, but.
Yeah, I wish it would. I wish it would go in more into what we're trying to explain, and that's why. I mean, that's why they do this. But they want people to call them Jews, so that they can say, well, they can discredit anything we say because we're anti-Semitic racists, and that's not what's happening here. So, and they're not even Jews. So it's
And they're very afraid because more and more people are waking up to the truth of just different things. So the Noahide laws are coming down the pipeline, in many countries, and they're just. But at the same time, we're talking about what Jesus talked about. We're talking about the Jews who claim they are Jews, but they're not.
Exactly.
Okay, they claim they're Jews, but they're not. Exactly. We're talking about a people who use false flag as a foundation. Their way is the false flag way. They wrap themselves up and impersonate. Okay, they're impersonators. Okay, that's what we're trying to say here. Okay, so
it says the following are statements from those in positions of power over the past few generations who have recognized and often been complicit in the one world conspiracy. Benjamin Disraeli, a Jew and Prime Minister of England, was attributed with this statement in 1844. The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes.
I mean, think about what he's saying there.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to trade off reading him? I'll read Winston.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, a Jew, a prime minister of England, stated to the London press in 1922, from the days of Spartacus, Weishaupt, Karl Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Bela Kun, Rosa Luxemburg, Emma Goldman, and he writes they're all Jews because they were all, Jews, but Emma Goldman.
They claim to
this
be
world.
Jews.
What's that, John?
They claim to be, at least.
They claim to be Jews, yeah. That's what we're saying. So, and then this world conspiracy has been steadily growing. This conspiracy played a definite recognizable role in the tragedy of the French Revolution, and the Jacobins. Remember that whole historical section of history. I mean, it has been the mainspring of every subversive movement during the 19th century, and now, at last, the band of extraordinary personalities from the underworld of the great cities of Europe and America have gripped the Russian people by the hair of their head and have become the undisputed masters of that enormous empire. And like I said, the bankers print the money, and then they get the governments to take the money, and then the governments get in debt, and then they call in the chips. Like every single time, and then the governments go, oh, we don't have the money to pay you. And then the bankers make a deal.
Yeah.
And that's you and me as people being pledged as collateral against the debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't want that, guys. We don't want that, man. Oh, man, we don't want that. We're locked away in our houses. We're getting locked down from this supposed virus. But what is this one, Joe?
Justice Felix Frankfurter, a Jew, U.S. Supreme Court Justice. The real rulers of Washington are invisible and exercise power from behind the scenes. Talking about the shadow government deal.
Yeah.
John Hyland, Jew, mayor of New York, 1918 to 1925, said the real menace of the republic is the invisible government, which, like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy legs over our cities. states and nations.
Man,
And you
dude.
know, I mean, this should sound familiar to people, right? This giant octopus language
Hmm.
and I mean, and we brought this up before, but they use these movies and these sensational, like fictional movies. Like this is basically in a comic book. You know, the octopus. I can't remember what it's called, but it's in that Captain America comic book, and it describes it perfectly though, and it's exactly what's happening. But they make it into a fiction to discredit anybody that's gonna talk like this because
Also,
now you
yeah,
just
that's
look
so
like you're
true.
crazy because okay, this I seen this in a movie. I seen this. I read this in a comic, but this guy's crazy. He's just talking about comic book stuff.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday,
Yeah,
and it's really significant for the brainwashing to know that, like, when you sit down, you're not just watching TV, you're watching weaponized TV.
yeah,
The content has been weaponized, and then the technology is getting a higher level to where they can really affect you and your thinking. And it's all done through your eyes, through the light, through the flicker rate, through the technology, and it's not good. And like Joe was saying, I mean, it's really not good. And that's why I don't watch TV. And I don't watch the TV because I hate it. I just
yeah,
I hate what it does to people as far as the predictive programming, like you're saying. Now what you're saying is that, like, and we can show like video after video. I mean, I'm not going to do that, but we could show video after video of where, like, we're just seeing, like, the Simpsons, for example, predict Kobe Bryant crashing with his daughter in a helicopter. Now it's down to the detail. Okay, it's right in your face, mocking you
right,
all the time. And so what happens is what Joe is saying too, is what happens is when the real event occurs and people start talking about it, when you go to your family and friends to try to talk about the event, and that you bring up, the event, they'll just think you're crazy because they saw the same event in their Simpsons episode.
right.
And so there's a subconscious connection. I'm telling you, this is subliminal brainwashing.
Yeah, and they use the same language and everything. That it's all this spell that's put over people. Basically, is what's
Yeah,
going
and by
on.
the way, since we're talking about the invisible government and that they exercise power behind the scenes, like, if people don't believe that, all you have to do is look at the video of Oliver North in Congress during those congressional meetings and investigation, where Oliver North was interrupted by another congressman who refused to answer the questions about the shadow government regarding the Constitution being suspended
Hmm.
and the shadow government being in place and plans for it to be in place. And they called for an executive session to talk about it and not in the regular session because we were under martial law, because the very fact that you don't let a congressman look at a certain program under the excuse of it's dangerous to our national security. Now, this excuse has been used by dictators, like national security. Like, you can't investigate anything,
Right,
even under the program of being a targeted individual. Like, the reason you can't get any justice and everybody pretends like it doesn't exist is because of that very reason.
right,
It's the same parallel type of thing going down, is
right.
all I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
But um but yeah, so, like, and then Franklin, excuse me, D. Roosevelt, um, U.S. president, in a letter, November 1st, 1933, to Colonial E. Mandel House, real name Haas, and Roosevelt states, the real truth of the matter is, as you know, and I know, that a financial element in the large centers has owned the government of the U.S. since the days of Andrew Jackson.
hmm,
History points to the last truly honorable and incorruptible American president as Andrew Jackson, Old Hickory. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, and he was known for fighting the bankers.
right.
He was
Yeah,
like, that's what
yeah.
he was known
Like
for.
yesterday, we had a quote from Andrew Jackson, I believe, on that we were talking about yesterday. But
Yeah, he's known for fighting the bankers, bro. And that's Roosevelt, who also declared our nation in the congressional record. It's in a Senate report and congressional record insolvent and bankrupt. That was back then. And he declared the Federal Reserve the true managers, the true runners of our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people just overlook that and still go vote.
So Rowan Gaither, president of Ford Foundation, in 1954 lends proof to what we know to be fact today, namely that many of our presidents have been a knowing part of this world conquest plot. Mr. Gaither stated to Congressional Reese Commission investigator Norman Dodd, we operate here under directives that emulate from the White House. The substance of the directives under which we operate is that we shall use our grant-making power to alter life in the United States so that we can comfortably be merged with the Soviet Union.
Look at that. And Dwight Eisenhower was president at the time of the at that time. But just think about what he's saying. I mean, and this is what we're trying to say to our family and friends and people that we know. We're trying to say to you that it's out in plain sight. It's right in plain view. You can say to me right now, you can say, oh, he didn't say that. That web page is a conspiracy web page. John, you need help. You need to get out more or whatever. You're just this and that. You know what I mean? But It's all in plain sight. You can see the videos of them also doing this, saying these things. Many of these people on this list have been on video recorded saying the same things. They all call for the they don't feel bad about the crisis. They don't want the crisis to stop. All they say when the crisis has happened is, oh, this is a great opportunity. Now, who do you think's the guilty party? Like, who do you think's guilty? They look at the crisis as an opportunity, meaning that wouldn't it be also far-fetched? Is it far-fetched to think that they have an invested interest to create a crisis?
Right.
I mean, is that too hard? Is that a conspiracy theory to think that people that only think that crises are opportunities?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet these people are on TV running around talking? I mean,
psycho, totally psycho. And people will just say, oh, well, the Soviet Union, it was dissolved or whatever, and you guys are just, communists. You're just paranoid of the communists or whatever, like they were back in the 50s and stuff. But, I mean, it's well known. I mean, you just read the Communist Manifesto, and you understand that the whole idea behind it is to get it as a one world power. It needs to be a one world power to really institute the communist government that's really that Marx talks about. So it's just everything's happening in a way to move it in that direction. Whatever things nations rise and fall or whatever. But you look at Russia now. And I mean, Putin's like more of a dictator now than ever. I mean, so you can't sit here and tell me that Russia's somehow a free nation now. So
yeah, there's only an illusion of freedom worldwide. I mean, if there is any semblance of that, or that being promoted at least on TV or whatever, and through the appearance of being part of the power structure through voting. But yeah, you're right, Joe. That's 100% right, man. They're trying to set up a worldwide dictatorship. And that every single president has been a knowing part of this world conquest plot. So even knowing that, like as far as in respect to voting, that these presidents, like we were looking at the Bilderberg group, we saw it on the list of people that are implementing the New World Order. And, so it's all in place and it's all been in plain view, plain sight. And that's why we think like when people tell me or mock me for telling them the truth and caring and seeing it like all around me, I think it's more of a mental illness to not see it when there's so much evidence.
Yeah. And I was just thinking too, this person on this, he's always, all these presidents or Jews or whatever, and you were talking about I can't remember what you're saying, but I remember that little girl. She came up with the chart that basically shows all of our presidents come from the same family. They're all they're like
The
all
bloodlines,
related.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the bloodlines. I
Yeah.
remember seeing that. And, I think Fritz Springmeier also talks about that a little bit. I'm not sure, but, and just because I say a name doesn't mean like, I subscribe to everything that person, it doesn't mean I'm like trying to get you to join a cult. It doesn't mean like any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, like,
Yeah.
God, dude, people, man, are so paranoid today in America, and no wonder because, like I said, we're under high tech military style propaganda that's designed to make us feel helpless
Right.
and make us feel desperate to take a solution that's coming down the pipeline that Joe and I have been trying to tell you about. That solution that's coming down the pipeline, we're not going to like.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm sitting here in the house, like doing this,
Mm-hmm.
because like, we're not going to like it.
Yeah.
I've been warning people about the gang stalking for years, saying that this only occurs in satanic communist countries. The hatred of Christianity just proves that. I mean, the churches hate Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the pastors in America, you start talking to them with the word of God and actually doing real discipleship, where you're involved in the person's life, and it's more than just rebuking somebody, but you're actually like involved in the person's life, and you correct the pastor, good luck. They don't listen. I mean, they won't listen to you.
Yeah.
It's been my experience no matter what. And other brothers that I've known that try to share with the pastors and warn them, like, God is going to judge you. Like, you can't just do this and get away with it and think you're getting away with it. I'm just warning you, like I would appear in the churches and start saying that. And, I'm sure it sounded crazy to them. And so if even telling you this sounds crazy that I was involved in doing that, but at the same time, I was like compelled with the word of God, like in my heart, burning like a flame in my heart, like I couldn't contain it, because I just like saw like these people are fakes, they're imposters.
Trump just extended the national social distancing to April 30th.
Okay, so the national social distancing is now extended to April 30th, you said?
No, like May.
Like to May, basically.
So yeah, what happened to is the nation really going to be opened up in Easter and all this stuff?
No.
It's just they're going to keep extending it. They're just
Colorado is till April, I think 11th, but they're probably going to most likely extend it. That's only
The way our sick government is if it's a real virus, they will open up things and say it's safe. And then people will just keep dying and they won't report on it. And that's like literally what like could happen. And
well, that's why I do think it probably is a real virus, because, for the longest time when they should have been closing things, when they should have been stopping flights from China and everything, they weren't. And, it just looked like they were just letting it, spread throughout the United States. That's why I think it probably is. And now they're just capitalizing on, oh, we got a crisis on our hands. And who could have possibly seen this coming? I mean, no one's to blame. I mean, who could have seen that this could have just been such a pandemic? I mean, when all the way since January, you could just see it rolling out from Wuhan.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just
ridiculous. And what's relevant about this? I mean, us reading quotes from world leaders about, the New World Order and the true power structure behind the world governments is the fact that we're dealing with their crisis that they create. And that crisis is this virus. And if you don't think it's going to touch you as far as the New World Order and what these people believe and think, I mean, you got another thing coming, because we're all being touched by this. Cities are different. The impact is different. The response is a little bit different in each city, but eventually there's we're saying, we've shown documents of a coordinated agenda to bring us to our knees for a purpose.
Right.
So that's what we should be concerned with right now. Yeah. And we got to get educated. I mean, many of you don't know that there's these groups, and there's these people that wish this upon us, that want this for us.
I'm pointing on something that Easter was just going to ask. So it says the president had previously said he wants to reopen the country for business by Easter, April 12th. despite warnings from public health experts.
Yeah.
However, Trump claimed on Sunday, this Sunday now, that Easter was just, quote, an aspiration, and that he hopes the country will be well on our way to recovery by June 1st.
Yeah, there's no way.
So they're going to social distancing, which means my work will be closed, because they can't put us in the office together, I don't think.
Yeah, they can't.
Until at least April, May.
We just have to all take it a day at a time, and that's what I'm trying to say to everybody, is just take it a day at a time, a minute at a time, and get in the Bible if you can.
Now they're saying that rural America is being hit the hardest with this stuff.
Oh, of course. Of course. The farmers and everything.
That makes sense, though, because their plan is to drive people to the smart cities.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I mean, this is all perfect.
See, I always thought that living in the cities, and you know how people would always like run to the rural areas and like want to grow food out there and all that. I always thought that that'd be the worst place to go, because I know what they're going to do is they know people are going to do that. So when they do declare martial law, they're going to go from the rural areas first and round everybody into the cities.
Yeah.
They're not going to go from the cities out to the rural areas. They're going to go to the rural areas because that's where everybody that's smart went. And they're going to round those people up into the city. You have a better chance, I think, in the city probably, because there's more people, you can run around, more chaos and stuff.
Yeah, it just depends. It just depends.
Yeah.
It depends. But it's getting more and more evil in the rural areas because they can profile. The only negative about it that I think from living in a small area,
everybody knows
small population.
Weirdo that's hiding out there, they target you.
Yeah. Yeah, because if they know, like, because the police, and word travels faster, of course, just because it's a smaller area and people know you more and can more contact, more opportunity for interaction if you go out, but less places to go too. But I think rural areas are way better than the city. If you have an opportunity to do that, man, because the city is getting worse and worse. And it's going to be a madhouse when people start shooting each other for food, and then the military has to get on the streets, to provide food.
So that just brings us to one of the main elements where I think this is going for this particular crisis, because they've set this up. And wish I had that bill that was signed, and I sent it to you once. That it was talking about the rights that were given to use bio-type warfare against our own citizens for riot control and for that kind of stuff.
Yes, I saw that.
They've allowed themselves, carte blanche on whatever they want to do to control riots. So that's where I see it. It's got to be moving to riots. That's what they want. They want this crisis to unfold into chaos. And probably not just in the cities, but everywhere. But I think the cities will be one of the main places where you're going to start seeing these riots start breaking out. Because look at how they're pushing people. I mean, they took away sports. They took away everybody's, fun, basically. Anything, going to the bars and all these things that people, were entertaining themselves with. So they've taken away the bread and circuses. They've taken away the food. It's scary. It's getting scarcer and scarcer to find food. So it looks to me that they're moving people in that direction to riot, to protest, to go out on the streets, because what else do you have to do? I mean, and people aren't going to be able to handle sitting in their houses, because that's just it's just against nature.
But I think the agenda is to keep us in our houses until we break. And that occurs, what Joe you're saying, until that occurs. And the reason I feel that way is because of the gang stalking, because of what they do to many people in the gang stalking. They put the pressure on the targeted individual till they break, and then are willing to. That's how they walk you into violence, is just torture you and torture you and torture you till you're ready to fight back. And then they call that terrorism. That's what they call. That's what they call, that they're fighting. They claim that your response to their torture is terrorism. Right. That's what they say. Right. So and it's evil.
Which is evil. It's funny. It's exactly what we've been talking about, from the beginning with this targeted individual program, is that it's not just, the plan wasn't ever just to have a certain number of, targeted individuals out there. That's just the test group. It was always meant for everyone. And now we're seeing it rolled out to the total population, that we're all being targeted, we're all being maneuvered into these situations, and we're all being tortured. And psychologically traumatized
Mm-hmm.
to do these. I mean, that's just what it's all about. As we've always said, it's going to be everybody. Everybody's the target. It's not just certain people.
That's what we've been saying. And also, and it's just, so family and friends need to stop watching so much TV, stop watching the news. I would never, unless you want to watch it to show people the propaganda, like the mainstream media, I would never go to the mainstream media and position myself underneath it and hear that without anything to counter it or have any other source of information and just submit to that.
Yeah.
And, because if you watch the mainstream news, like your local news, they'll play the same stories in a row all week. It's not just, they don't change like from day to day. The same stories get played all week. It's like rerun all week of the same, like they'll have a story about like a mountain cat attacking a person or something on a walk. And that same story at the end of the news will be played all week long, so people are really reminded. So that's a form of brainwashing, repetition. We know that. We talked about that, like just the constant repetition, and then making us all tired and making us all have to fight for survival. It's all Hunger Games, all planned out. It's all by design. All the executive orders are in place for when the public responds to the austerity measures. The military's in place for that.
Yeah, what's the Bible verse that talks about those that you would bring yourself into subjection to, you'll be brought into bondage by?
That's 2 Peter, bro.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so yeah, Joe, read that, man.
Says, while they promise them liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption. For whom a man is overcome, of the same he is brought into bondage. I mean, it just nails it. I don't know.
And that's the religious world too today. That's the religious world where they promise them liberty,
absolutely. But this is why you need to come out of the 501c3 churches too. It's the same principle here. That you don't want to be brought into bondage by these ungodly men that just are living in a form of godliness, and they're still the servants of the devil. I mean, no matter how you look at it, so they're gonna
because they're imposters. They're posing as something they're not. And they're deceiving their congregations. Now, how godly is that? I don't care how nice they are or how like moral they are. If they're deceiving their congregations and they're on the payroll of FEMA or Homeland Security and they're not telling you about it, and then they're reporting to the government about your activity, it's not right, Yeah,
I mean, again, the Bible talks about those that are appear to be ministers of rightiousness, are really the devil's minions.
The servants of corruption.
The servants of
Where corruption. Is that verse? What was that verse?
That is, I don't know. I'm not good with
references. That's 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
Let me try to go there too. But it says, while they promise them liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption. But notice this in respect to the message of the cross. Notice the verse right here where the line where it says they themselves. So again, you can see the self-life, doing the living in a form of godliness. This is where you can see the form of godliness. And then because the self is the servant of corruption. That's why Jesus said in the gospel, he said, they did many wonderful works in my name, but I said, away from me, for I never knew you who work iniquity. Because the self-life constitutionally is a worker of iniquity. So
that's why Paul says there is no good thing in my flesh.
Amen. Yeah. So that's why I use the word constitutionally, because it's a matter of your makeup. It's not something you do or not do. It's a matter of your nature. It's deeper than just what you do or don't do. It is that, but it's much deeper than that too. And that's another failure I feel of a lot of these 501c3 cult leaders that have taken over the church in America from the government. They just run it into the ground, man. And then they've hinged all of Christianity. They've taken the Bible out of Christians' hands in this big agenda. And then they replace it with psychology. And of course, if it's a state-run institution, you have to have a state-run license to teach in a state-run institution. So that's why you have to go to get your psychology degree in Bible college.
Exactly.
You know, and it's just this thing.
Take a look at how many of the 501c3 pastors have a psychology degree as well. I mean, it's very prevalent within this church setting today.
And like when we're doing the living and we're looking for answers and we come under the teachings of somebody that is obviously false, and we know it and we don't do something about it to get away from it and get out from under it, or we don't have that sense like this is false and to get out of it, then we're really not being convicted by the Holy Spirit. Like we're really not experiencing the influence of what God is doing for his children today. Like literally, I mean, and that's something pretty alarming, pretty serious. But they promised them liberty. Isn't that funny? Because everybody, you know, professing themselves to be wise, they're fools, you know, Romans chapter 1. So, and these are the same people that promise liberty, you know, they sport themselves in their own deceivings, basically. So that's all tied together, all those verses, and they all kind of fit together. And then he says, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled therein and overcome, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. And for it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than after they have known it to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them. But it happened unto them according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. And that's really the dynamics, of what happens, to explain it, of what happens when we get in the flesh. Because when we get in the flesh and we start doing the living, then we get under the law. And then when we get under the law has the power to revive the activity of sin in our physical body. And then sin begins to wage war against the soul. So what I'm saying is that when we start doing the living, we put ourselves under the demands of the law, because the law is spiritual. We're carnal, sold under slavery to sin. So even though we're born again, we can live by the wrong source and end up putting ourselves under the law and receiving that kind of experience, because until we know that we died to the law in the body of Christ, Romans 7:4, until we know that we died to the law in the body of Christ, we will still think we're in a relationship to the law, and whether we know it or not. And so we need to know that we died to it so that we can stop and end that activity of being answerable to the law and having to constantly strive to perform its demands. And it's always coming, and you might not know it, you might not be aware of it, but thou shalt not covet happens when you get in the flesh and start doing the living. And when you do, the motions of sins which are by the law work in your members, in the members of your body, to bring forth fruit unto death. So we've got the motions of sin. That means that when you start doing the living, the law of sin and death, which is in your physical body, begins to produce appetites, cravings, and desires, and wants. And those wants begin to conceive in the soul. After attacking the soul, the mind, will, and emotion, they conceive in the mind. These powers, this is a spiritual force. It's not just a moral problem, it's a spiritual power. And no matter how much you have good positive thinking, like positive mental attitude, there's no way to overcome the law but by experiencing another law. That's why we go into Romans 8:1 and see the freedom to the struggle of trying to please God from the wrong source. And we spend 20, 30 years, like many Christians I've met, they spend like 20 years living from the wrong source. And being born again, yeah, but never spending time in trusting the Lord in fellowship that he can supply you, and like sitting there with him and remaining with him. It's so easy to say, oh, I know the Lord and I know him as Savior, but do you really know him as the Savior? Because you keep saving yourself. And even though that, you know, I'm not talking about just like throwing up your hands and being helpless here, but I'm saying that you got to give the Lord an opportunity to work, basically. And, you got to give place, like basically to the Lord. You have to deliberately with your will give him that place of first place, and also before everything, because the book of Colossians says he's before everything. So anytime something else comes up other than him, you just know where to go because he's before everything. And even if your thought life is distracting you, he's before that. And so if it's trying to pull you away and tempt you away, you just say, Lord, you're before this, and remain in your fellowship, talking to him, fellowshipping with him, and he comes in to handle the thoughts. And that's the difference between the real gospel and just the modern day Christianity today, where it's self-help and, weekend seminars of how to have your best life now.
Yeah. Yep.
And just stuff like that,
Yep.
What do you think, Joe?
I think I was just went ahead and went to that verse in 2 Corinthians.
What is it? Let me pull it up.
11:15 or 14 and 15.
I'm just pulling it up. You can read it.
Yeah, it says, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transported into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So there's just the working out of the self, and its end.
Exactly. I have it pulled up here on the screen. And this is really a powerful verse that Joe, that you brought up, man, because, starting in verse, wait a minute, let me pull it up here real quick. I'm like losing my cursor on the screen because it's it's like white on white, so I'm like losing it. Okay, so, So here he's talking about cutting off occasion of people that are walking basically in the flesh, trying to sport themselves, basically making a fair show in the flesh and living in a form of godliness. These are all verses I'm quoting. These are all verses. They're living in a form of godliness, basically. But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off occasion. See, Paul's trying to cut off the opportunity that these false people or demons or whatever, these people that have demons, basically, basically from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they may be found even as we, for such are, like Joe read, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. So there's a difference here. As Christians, we're not transforming ourselves. It's not a work that comes from ourselves. Here again, we see the self. And we see that the self is not involved in our transformation, but Christ, and spending time with Christ is what transforms us. And by being in his presence, it's what changes us. And that involves time that people are not willing to give today in America, but it just involves time and contact, But these are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. So they're like chameleons. They're like shapeshifters. They're like people that are, the narcissist, the psychopathic narcissist, because that's a trait that they have, is they're always somebody different for whomever they're around. Yeah. So whomever they're around, they cater to that crowd and fully submerge themselves to the act.
Yeah, and doesn't that sound exactly like our politicians of today?
Dude.
They're totally just transforming themselves into whatever the people want to see,
Yeah, and that goes with the next line that says, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Like, who do you think these politicians are serving, They can like literally murder children and bomb countries and do all this stuff that are innocent. Remember, we didn't find the yellow cake uranium. There was no weapons of mass destruction. There was no proof of any of that. Who do you think they're serving? It's like, we go and attack all these countries illegally and do all this stuff for the New World Order. There's a lot of us know what it's like to be tortured under this, targeting program where we've been tortured so bad, and we still haven't done the violence that they've tried to walk us into, basically. So,
Man, it just makes me wonder what my job is really going to do. I mean, my job they haven't said anything to the employees about like what's their plans, what are they going to do. They've allowed employees to leave and to file for unemployment if they feel like their lives are in danger from this virus or whatever. So they're allowing certain employees just to go ahead and go home and not work, while the rest of us are working, and they're not telling us anything. They're not giving us any incentive to keep working. It's just like you still got your crappy low-paid job. I just wonder what they're going to do.
It's not that they don't have an answer, like they're trying to pretend on TV. They have an answer, and that's to implement communism completely or socialism completely, and then just pay us a universal wage, it's called. When we're talking about communism, there's that satanic element to it. So we have to cover it. We have to cover it with the scriptures, cover it with the word too, because we're showing, how the enemy infiltrates and how he masquerades as a servant of righteousness. His servants, act as if they're moral. They get on TV, and they pose as the savior. They're the ones telling you, we're here to keep you safe. And while they're saying that, the local sheriff's office is working together with the threat fusion centers to literally harass and follow around and abuse and torture and stage setups, around the individual. And so it's like, that's literally what they do. I was going to the crisis theory, this page right here, because I just wanted people to know, it's really important to understand. And if you can see on the right-hand side here, Marxian, let me move this really quick. I got too much stuff in the way. But this is called the crisis theory. And that's Karl Marx right there, a photograph of him. And
with the Masonic hand in the shirt thing, yeah.
Yeah, he's got the Freemason thing going down. That's, I think, I can't remember what they call that, but there's that one. What's that?
The hidden hand.
The hidden hand, yeah. That's what it is, yeah. But I mean, here's a German philosopher. And, the reason we bring this up is because communism, the central feature of it, like we were saying the other day, the central feature of implementing communism has to do with this way they operate, the way they roll it out on the general public, and how they involve themselves with the general public, okay? How they get involved in your life by force, basically, by force, And it's a system, and it's a theory, and it's a way of operation. And that's what we're trying to say here, that our country is no longer a free country, and the Constitution has been suspended under a national emergency for many years now.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter what the national emergency is that's added after the initial one, because the initial one puts us in a state of martial law legally, and then we basically, just because we haven't seen the transformation of our country totally along those years, doesn't mean that the takeover legally didn't happen. And the takeover happened, you know what I mean? And the Banker Acts that were passed, and we went into bankruptcy, and we had no way of paying it back. And they act like this is some future event on the news or something, where it's amazing. So, but this is Marxian economics, and people should read this and look up the crisis theory, because we're talking about how communist governments around the world use crises, and they stage crises and allow them to happen at least. They don't stop them at least. And I'm saying even on the street level with creating provocateur groups like Antifa, and allowing them to go after the general public in the name of hiding behind, race. And basically they're being paid by the cops to go and provoke violence so that the cops have an excuse to use their LRADs on the general public that are standing there, And so this is the engagement I'm talking about. This is the war I'm talking about. This is how they seek to engage you,
Yeah.
how they seek to interact with you. And it's not good, folks. It's not good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't want this. Nobody wants this form of government, this form of world government that they're putting together. And it's
I mean,
absolutely,
people,
I mean, they're the globalists want it, the rich elite, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's only to enslave the rest of the world under this regime that they're setting up.
So guys, under this crisis theory, we need to understand the crisis theory. Just get that through your head, crisis theory.
Yeah.
And think about how many crises have existed, even in modern history in our country, in America. We go from one major crisis, like mass shootings, 9/11, Oklahoma City, all these different things, Waco. All along the years, we've seen these crises, and we've been told this narrative, that, all along the way, that's really been forming the thinking of American people today. I mean, it's amazing, how our country has been taken over piece by piece, and how people don't really realize that in America. I mean, that's amazing that it's right in plain sight.
Yeah.
And we can have all the facts, all the laws passed, everything else, but yet still be in denial and act like,
Yeah.
like we're
It
free
just
or
shows
something.
how effective propaganda is, and how brainwashed people are under, and mind controlled people are under the propaganda.
Yes, sir.
And that's
Yes,
why
sir.
we talk a lot about the act that legalized propaganda, NDAA. It's absolutely the tool that they're leveraging so that people won't listen to people like us, because we're the crazy ones now, because they're just so mind controlled that now we're the crazy ones.
Yeah, and they've programmed that response into people. They've programmed it into people. It's like through the TV, as we were saying, through other media and through these things. And they've literally programmed people subconsciously to have these pre-programmed responses to the truth,
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this whole section of society that believes that because it's negative, that I'm telling you negative things,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm Debbie Downer, and don't tell me don't be negative so much. And the problem is having that thinking, like positive and negative, like what happens when the truth is negative and it comes to you and you just deny it and ignore it and call people that want to speak the truth crazy or Debbie Downer because they're telling you the truth. I mean, it's not reality to think like that.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's just like a delusional way of thinking.
Yeah, it's a cognitive dissonance, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
So mental illness has been accepted as normal in America, is what I'm trying to say. Like a damaged way of thinking has been accepted in America as something normal today, right? And even promoted as a virtue.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even promoted as a virtue, yeah. But okay, guys. So this crisis theory, this is Karl Marx. This is how the communist countries run the country. They create the crisis, and then I wanted to show this too, if you guys can see. This is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. But this is explaining really well and in great detail. This is a huge web page, but at Stanford EDU. But this is Hegel dialectics. This is the way they control us, guys. This is the most important thing.
You were
Understanding.
This is what you're talking about, dialectics. They use two different opposing views to control, and they just control both sides of the
right.
It's the Republican Democrat, the good guys and the bad guys, but
Pepsi,
they're the ones controlling both sides in order to manipulate. Yeah.
And it's a form of controlling and shaping the masses to a goal. Yeah. And they have a goal, and they create the two opposing sides. And that's why we are saying, it's not about right or left, because the bankers, they run the show and control and pay both sides to work for them. So they're not working for the people, they're working for those who pay them. And the bankers pay them to work in this consolidation effort. Okay, it's a consolidation effort. They're managing a bankruptcy and assuming ownership, and they're slowly slowly rolling their ownership, that they're claiming ownership, in the flesh. They're appearing all over the place, these people. That's why we see like just so many groups being created, like social justice and all that stuff, because it's like, a good moral, you're going to always see these same patterns. Okay, guys, you're going to always see a good moral reason to do evil. Okay, a good, like, so every time somebody's confronted, let me just tell you, that is the government that does that. Okay, every single time they have a good reason. So when you confront them, they're like, no, this is really what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, the red flag laws, all this stuff that they're rolling
We're just
out.
keeping people safe.
Yeah. Just try. We all need to do it together, though. That's the main one of the main
everyone
things
together.
we're in this together, guys. And if you see your neighbor, if you see your neighbor, beat his dog, then maybe you should report that, because he might be a psychopath that needs his guts taken away. It's all this type of thinking. It's just sick, but.
Gosh, guys, it is sick. This is just all sickening. If people want to learn about the Hegelian dialectic, just check out stanfordedu.com and type in Hegel's dialectic.
And you need to learn about this too. I wouldn't even make it it's required reading right now. It's required.
It's required.
You
yeah.
Understand this, because you're under this
hardcore
right now. It's happening to you right now. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
And in order to wake up
directly affects you.
Yeah, in order to wake up from it, you just read it, and once you see it, it's impossible not to see, because it's so obvious. It's so.
You're going to see it everywhere. You'll see it everywhere. We're just trying to shed some light on some things here, and like just show you guys. Like, this is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Hegel's dialectics, and it's problem, reaction, solution. So, and that's what Joe was saying too. Like, they create the crisis under communism. They create the crisis. We got to get this down, because people can't believe that the government could actually do those kind of things. And when you say the government, 9/11 was an inside job. If people say that, people reaction like, oh no, and like get all mad protecting the government, because they have the Stockholm syndrome, and like
it also goes back to what we were first talking about, the unseen government, the ones that are in true power of everything that's going on here. That's who we're talking about here.
Speaking of that, let's see here. And but yeah, people need to know this. Like, Joe, this is really important. Like you were saying, I think, like, I agree with you that this is like the central feature, beside understanding the crisis management, how governments create crises to rule over us, okay, to get involved in our lives and to rule over us.
Yeah.
And the Hegel dialectic is them creating the two opposing forces that are supposedly real, right? Funding both sides of the wars, just whatever it might be. Yeah. And then everybody has to pick a side.
Yeah.
And, and then the divide and conquer begins.
Yeah.
And that's how they keep us subject.
Yeah. Okay.
So like under this brainwashing and under this Hegel's dialectic. Okay. So this is very important. And
it's a major part of fascism and the kind of government that they're setting up here.
Exactly. And there is a crisis ahead, guys. That's why I put this up. Like, this is major crisis ahead. Like, I mean, because that's how they run. That's what they do. It's coming again and again and again. It might be a mass shooting. It might be, the West Coast sinking. I mean, who knows, and I'm not being sensational. It's just that these people need to escalate.
Yeah.
They're going for broke.
Yeah. And that's, if you think this is over at all, I mean, it's just getting started anyway. But even when this looks like it's finally dissipating or whatever, you just got another one right behind it and another one right behind it, and it's just this how trauma-based mind control works. It's never gonna stop. They're gonna keep escalating and escalating until you break. Basically.
Right on, Joe. Yeah, Joe knows what he's talking about. I mean, dude, this is like. That's what they're going to do, exactly what they're going to do. Psychopaths and narcissists never back off. Bullies never back off, and they're just going to keep going for broke. And no matter what you do, that's why I talk to people that have been targeted before, and it's kind of funny because it's like, some people think that, well, if I don't do videos, then I won't be targeted, they'll back off. But that's not the case. They'll target you whether you do it or not. And that's what we're trying to say,
They'll
because
just
it's a
ramp it
system.
up. They'll just continue to ramp it up. The more you try to break away from it, the more they're going to ramp it up. That's just how
That's what my experience has been. Yeah.
They have to get you involved. I mean, it's
Yeah.
required that you participate in this.
You're talking about and that really covers like the hyper game theory,
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm talking
like, yeah, that's what Joe's talking about, like the hyper game theory, which involves another system of social control, a tactic that's used to corner you, and sabotage is a real key element, and sabotage of property. That might be a way of explaining this, where someone just comes around sabotaging your car all the time, or sabotaging your property all the time, whatever it might be. You constantly are in that cycle of having to replace things and pay for things and spend money and all this stuff. And no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to adjust away from it, it just keeps happening no matter where you go. You can move from state to state. It just keeps happening. Same experience, repeated over and over and over and over. And if you go to tell anybody about it, that it keeps happening this way, people will just think you're crazy, because how could this keep happening to you?
Because
over and
part
over
of
and
it
over?
is the sensationalism of it. I mean, it's just way too sensational to even be conceivable, and it's by purpose, by design, to be over the top, because that's what makes the gaslighting work, right? Because it's over the top. This guy's crazy. What's so special about him that they're doing all this to him, and all that, and it's very controlled. It's very demonic, but yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can see my screen still, but like, this is common in Nazi Germany, and it's a propaganda technique, since we're talking about brainwashing, and kind of what Joe's saying too. It's like, well, this right here is a theory, and I can't, let's see, I don't know. It's called The Big Lie, and you can go to Wikipedia to see it, but it's like a logical trick. It's a trick. It's a thinking trick that they pull on the masses. Okay, the expression was coined by Adolf Hitler. Okay, and it says, when he dedicated his 1925 book Mein Kampf, about the use of a lie so colossal that no one would believe that someone could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Okay, so he's talking about just what Joe is talking about. We're talking about right here, Joe is just talking about history, okay, because he knows history. We're just sitting here trying to tell you people that we're seeing this unfold like all around us. Okay, people are making these same statements and comments, and we have Project Project Paperclip.
Yeah.
Not Mockingbird is the project for the media, with the CIA getting involved in the media. I made a mistake and said Project Paperclip the other day, but Project Paperclip is when they brought over the Nazi scientists, put them at heads of universities and NASA and everything else. So Vernon von Braun, the whole thing. And so, and these, the Nazi show trials were basically fake for the most part, and they took the scientists that were running the death camps, folks, and brought them to the United States and stuck them in our government, stuck them at the heads of Ivy League schools and at NASA. So just so you know.
Totally.
Okay, and that's real history. Okay, so you know, and they don't teach you that in public school or whatever. But so this is why Joe is saying too. I want to address this too with Hitler's Big Lie. There's a whole topic, a book written on this. Okay, we're talking about, this is a book written on this. Okay, so it's not some like little issue. Okay, this is central. I mean,
and people think, oh, how could I would have never. If I was in Nazi Germany, I would have never let it get that far. I would have never succumbed to this type of brainwashing technique. But that's what we're saying. You're under it right now. It's happening to you right now. The same thing that happened in Nazi Germany is happening right now, and even worse.
That's the danger. That's the danger with the frog in the pot. And that's why we say the frog in the pot, because it's slow. And it's so slow, but there's a goal here. and slowly but surely, we're going to see things transform completely.
Yeah.
And this, if we keep going in this direction, but
absolutely.
Let's see here, permanent nationalists. But anyways, I just wanted to show that the bigger the lie. So that's when a targeted individual complains about the sensational nature of the abuse that they're under, that nobody believes them because it's so sensational. It makes the target sound crazy to even mention it. And that's the danger. They've crafted these programs.
That's what they've done. The CIA, has termed this conspiracy theory term and put people under this label of conspiracy theorists. This is the same practice at work here, because the conspiracy is so big. That's what we're talking about. This huge communist conspiracy. For this communist takeover of our nation, of all nations, and it's so big that people are just going to discount it for this very reason, this big lie. That's a good thing to bring up.
And speaking of the takeover of nations, the United States of America officially abolished the individual states in 1972. This is about President Nixon through the executive orders, because speaking of police states and the militarization of our society, basically bringing us the battlefield of America, the war on the streets of America, we're basically, so by executive order, he quietly recognized the United States, 50 individual states with a 10-region plan. The implementation of this regional plan awaits only the right moment in world history and the right set of crises. How convenient. Yeah, these are like unrelated websites, but I'm just saying, like, you can see, and once you wake up to this worldwide dictatorship, you will understand. And once you understand the way communism works, you will understand how surrounded we really are. Okay. And we need to pray. We need to pray. We need to trust the Lord and pray.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like, as Joe was saying in the scriptures, but before, to whom a man is overcome, the same as he brought into bondage, and we can't just be overcome. We have to be educated. We have to know these things.
Yeah.
God is going to hold us accountable. You can't just claim ignorance, when you know better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And God will expose it in the end. And you don't want that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The only answer out there for everyone, in case you're just like, wow, this is, you're actually listening to us and you're actually starting to let some of this sink in. What do you do? The only answer is going to be Jesus Christ. So
exactly.
He's the only way out of of all this mess, because he's the only, you have to give your life over to him, because right now your life is being controlled to in every kind of way. So you have to give your life over to him, because otherwise you're going to lose it. That's just what he says, right?
Yeah, and stop loving the things that are killing you. You know what I mean? Like watching TV, it's killing you. All these things that you laugh and mock when people tell you, it's just, you got to just slow down and realize that there are psychopathic murderers in control. And I'm not trying to sensationalize that, but we're showing you the evidence in history, the quotes, their desire and what that shapes up to be, that desire of, establishing a new world order and making it a communist dictatorship worldwide, and doing it through crises, bringing it about by many, many crises. And so the new world order is coming, and it's coming a lot faster than people will even be able to blink. I mean, it's coming fast.
Yeah. That's why, Nazi Germany is just the perfect example of this. It's like, 1 minute they were, everybody was praising them and everybody was like all on board, and Germany was this wonderful place, and the next they were slaughtering people and just psychopaths. And it happens in the blink of an eye, and you think that you're not going to do that, but you're mistaken if you're not awake to what they're doing to you.
Also, to add to what Joe is saying, don't kid yourself. Electromagnetics were certainly used during these times on the civilian population and to control the military.
Yes.
We're talking about mind control and electromagnetics, wave frequency broadcasts that have been used and deployed all over the world. And this is not some new technology. It's new to people, but it's new to the mainstream. But the reason I'm showing this website too is just if you can see it, the United States of America officially abolished the individual states in 1972. But this just has to do with the FEMA regions that they're trying to create, and FEMA is involved in targeting innocent civilians for the war on terror under the executive orders. They get the funding from, and they target innocent civilians. By profile policing and what we've been talking about with the gang stalking. So here they are in this emergency, and they're trying to talk about, this plan has already been done, but this dividing up and making FEMA regions in the United States for FEMA to become the central power structure, basically, that runs the country in a crisis. So they're going for emergency.
And we're absolutely seeing this rolled out right now. Yeah, absolutely.
What'd you say, Joe?
We're absolutely seeing this rolled out right now with the 1 million troops on American soil, and all this. It's moving into place right now as we speak.
They have to have an enemy. They constantly have to have an enemy. They create their enemy and fight against an enemy they create, and that's what we're seeing, guys. We're seeing that this is high-level manipulation. Okay, just to put it simply, this is high-level manipulation, and it's on a frequency that is so consistent and so perpetual that it will completely captivate you and mystify you and suck you in. And unless you assert yourself, I'm saying you can't be passive as a Christian today. You can't be passive. You can't, because there's forces at work that are there to take control of you.
Absolutely.
And you have to assert your spirit by calling on the name of the Lord. Like, that's just the central thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say, John. You said it really well. That's sweet.
Right on, brother. Right on. Cool. Yeah, but this is just like, bro, this is just an above map. And it shows the different FEMA regions. But this was done a long time ago, this map. But I'll just read like a section of it, but it says regions under which the United States has actually been operating since 1972. The 10 regions are administrative units of the United Nations. Now, we see also the United Nations over the years has taken over the national parks, and they even put their plaques on the buildings that say that they're owned and controlled by the United Nations, the UN. Okay, so, and if you don't believe me, go to your national park. Well, I mean, you can't now because we're not free. We're actually under, basically dictatorial rule right now, which is really scary. I was telling people along the years, Joe, just when the Patriot Act came, I was like, man, under this crisis, it's just going to give them an excuse to use this.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point that we're trying to say, is that this is the way they interact with the public, is they create the crisis, and then they're there either to pose as the savior on TV and do the Delphi technique, which is another element of their control, which is, crisis, trauma-based mind control. And then doing the Delphi technique, getting on TV, the panel of experts. And the experts are all there to shape your mind, to tell you what is what, okay? That's part of the Delphi technique, okay? Which people need to understand what it is.
Yeah, which you've been put under since grade school. You've been put under this technique because
literally
you're taught to listen to the expert. I mean, just if you think about it, how many times have you been subjected to that? To the teacher, to the professor, to the scientist, to your boss, or whatever. It's this technique that it's a very good point.
Yeah, really. I mean, and don't forget about George H.W. Bush, our president, said that the United Nations was a superior body. Okay, so his one pledge was to submit the United States sovereignty to the United Nations. He even publicly made speeches about it because he was so in love with the United Nations. Okay, so that's what countries and world leaders are appointed to do all around the world. They're voting. They're not going to give that power to the people. Yeah. They are appointing leaders and shaping our future.
Yeah, I mean, no president talked more about the New World Order than this guy. He was just
George
New
Bush.
World Order. I mean, it's just like all the time.
Okay, so and then they have all these crises that they list right here for FEMA to get involved. At any moment, the head of FEMA will suddenly appear announcing that he is taking temporary control and quoting all the various executive orders and laws passed by Congress, giving him all the authority he needs to assume the powers of government of all the branches of our former constitutional government. So chapter 32, chemical and biological warfare program. How nice and lovely. What a nice gift. Oh, what a nice gift. And then, okay, so this has to do, Joe, can you break this down a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's just, it just goes into like what you were talking about, further down. It talks about how Congress will give executive control to the president, because they'll state in here that we're against any kind of chemical and biological weaponry being used on anybody, but during times of riot and crisis, we will give executive control over to the president temporarily to be able to use these weapons against whomever it may be necessary.
Yeah.
And that's a very generalized wording, but that's basically what they're saying throughout this thing. It's giving them carte blanche to use whatever they want against whomever they want.
Yeah, that's common, and that's what we're saying. Another element in communism is to call somebody a terrorist and then expand the definition after everybody's been brainwashed and traumatized, expand the definition of what it means to be a terrorist and include everything and everyone in that definition. So it's like a big dragnet, and then they can selectively target whoever speaks out. Okay, so whoever wants to resist the control coming. Okay, that's why they do it.
Yeah, that's why I say they're herding us into this rioting type of scenarios. I think just what I see coming because of this particular piece of work they have here. That's what I think they're doing, because they want to implement these measures. They want to because
this is insane.
They're freaking psychopaths, guys.
Yeah, they want to just use us as their little guinea pigs in their experiment because that's the way they view us. They're Satanists. That's a part of this. I'm not saying every single one of them, but they are Satanists. They do the rituals, basically, and I know that sounds funny to a lot of people, but they do definitely do.
Well, I mean, Trump admits he was, he's a Kabbalist. I mean, he
admits
it in his own book.
Anything,
I mean, it's not like we're just making stuff up. This is stuff this guy's said, and so many other of them are Kabbalists, and that's the highest form of witchcraft, and it's just absolute wickedness.
It is. It's black magic, black witchcraft. It really is, and it comes from. I believe it comes from when the Pharisees were taken captive in Babylon. Mm-hmm. They learned all these teachings and then basically brought it back, and it was the Midrash was the oral teaching that became the Talmud. And the Talmud was just the written form of the Midrash, but then there's that whole section of the Kabbalistic element of the black magic that is deadly. Right. And I don't even know, a good person to point to for that is Madonna. Mm-hmm. I mean, just even in her recent bathtub. I mean, people got to understand she was doing a ritual. Yeah. Okay, that was a ritual. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a bottom line with the rose petals and everything. You just got to look it up, look into it. I know it sounds sensational, but if you look into it, I mean, that's why I say it, because I can back up what I'm saying. It's not.
I think she was one of the. From my memory, she was one of the first of these elite entertainer type people to say that she's a Kabbalist kind of.
Yeah, and so what we're saying here too is that the government does express an interest to experiment and put biological weapons in the public and watch what happens and just ride it out and let it burn through the public and just have a great time learning about how it kills us. And, just really studying us like we're ants in this, we're just in this petri dish to them. And people have got to understand, you're not going to persuade these people. You're not going to convince these people. You're not going to be able to change these people. They have a goal and they are going to carry out their goal. And that we're just seeing over the years that it's
Yeah.
gotten worse and worse. They wrote the Patriot Act and it's like this big, guys. Okay. So like, it's just like they passed it. Nobody in Congress read it. And they even laughed on TV and bragged about how they didn't read it.
Oh yeah, we didn't read it. It's too long. It's too
It's too long.
complicated.
And it took away all our rights. It took away all our rights. It was like competing with the Constitution, and there goes the Constitution. And, we just have been ruled by this dictatorship ever since. But I was going to this website really quick. It's Toolshare. I've never been to this website before, but they had a good definition of the Delphi technique. So we were talking about before, just, too, what's important about to take from this is that you've got three things happening. You've got crisis is being created by the government. It's historically documented in history that communist governments do this.
Mm-hmm.
We've shown that they use the Hegelian dialectic to achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the Delphi technique to herd us like cattle into accepting their solution.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the three things that people have to understand and take away from this video, is that's the central thing that we have to understand, is so we can detect it.
Yeah.
And you'll start, like, as you were saying, Joe, earlier, you start to see it like everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. I mean, and that's the intention, is to immerse you into it. That's what propaganda does. It immerses you into that brainwashing so that you can never escape it. It's just all around you all the time, constantly just bombarding you. That's why television looks the way it does nowadays. It's just like flash, flash, flash. It's intense. It's just boom, 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 boom. And that's what's happening to you.
Yeah, and like the news we were talking about is along the same lines, where the mainstream media has the news and the music is really intense. It's like and you're just like, oh my god, and you're seeing like houses falling to the ground.
Yeah, it's like you'll just have an anxiety attack just freaking watching the news.
It's so bad for you, and it's just like, yeah, it is definitely crafted military propaganda to break you, to make you stuck in fear, and to make you just not be able to make any decisions. And that's another element that we were mentioning the other day about communism, is that and part of the Hegelian dialectic with the two opposing forces is to say two opposite things, over and over and over, parallel to each other, and act like that's okay, like act like, that something's not wrong with that. Like, so when the government comes out one day and says, masks can't protect you, and then the next day they say masks can protect you, you should get them.
Yeah.
And then the next day is you shouldn't get a mask, it doesn't protect you, don't get them. So there's this psychotic break, but that's done, folks. That's done to subdue you inwardly and to keep you from asserting your will and your own way of thinking, your own thinking, to be able to think for yourself.
It feeds the cognitive dissonance. We should bring that up at some point, but the cognitive dissonance is what.
Let's bring it up let's bring that up in a second. I was just going to read this short little definition. So it says, the article describes the concept of the Delphi technique developed by the Rand Corporation. Oh, how great. So here we've got the Rand Corporation, also responsible and involved in individuals, you know what I mean, in a lot of the technologies that are being used to harm people that are innocent civilians. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. And don't think we're like making this up or like sensational, because you remember the Cuban embassy issue, that they were attacked, in the embassy, and there was like nerve damage created to their ears from acoustic weapons. So we're talking about these silent weapons for quiet wars, like Deborah Tavares also mentions, but the Rand Corporation in a practical way. So after reading, you will understand the basics of this powerful decision-making and problem-solving tool. And I'm not going to read all this, but people should look up what the Delphi technique is. And it's creating, basically, simply put, it's creating a board of experts, supposed experts, and creating a crisis, because the crisis is definitely needed. And then as the crisis drives them to the government who has the answer, right? So that's this way that they herd the sheeple people like right into being brainwashed and just going along with the government and what they're doing and what they're saying. So it's a way of controlling us. So the Delphi technique, they have these experts, and through also the Hegelian dialectic, where they create the whole debate, they create both sides, they create the argument. So and then lead you into their solution through the Delphi technique. Right. So what we're saying, simply put, guys, is that they use the Hegelian dialectic combined with the Delphi technique to achieve their goal. And this is being used against us military style all the time.
Right.
24/7.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening.
That's why I say the media is the enemy, one of the enemies, and they need to be restrained. I mean, because of what they're causing and what they're doing, the mainstream media.
Yeah, and they're going to be, they're going to be praised as the truth sayers and the ones that need to be heard, and we're going to be the ones that are spreading disinformation. I mean, that's what this, you watch that Event 201, and it's very, very clear that those that are going against their narrative are going to be the disinformation, and they will be shut down. I mean,
that's right. And then Joe, Stockholm syndrome, is that what you wanted me to look up?
What did I say? No, cognitive dissonance. I don't know how to spell it. Yeah, dissonance.
Oops. Yeah, Google does my spelling for me sometimes. I'm actually using, if you guys notice, I'm using
yeah.
Can you see that, Joe?
Yeah.
I'm just, DuckDuckGo or whatever. It's a good browser. I recommend it. I recommend it because it's a little more secure.
Yeah.
I've got the hiccups, man.
Yeah, but okay, anyway, so cognitive dissonance occurs when a person holds two or more contradictory beliefs.
Sorry, Joe. Okay, go ahead.
Ideas or values or are participants in an action that goes against one of these three and experiences psychological stress because of that. According to this theory, when two actions or ideas are not psychologically consistent with each other, people do all in their power to change them until they become consistent. The discomfort is triggered by the person's belief clashing with new information perceived, wherein they try to find a way to resolve the contradiction to reduce their discomfort. I mean, this is exactly what they're doing to you when they say, don't wear a mask, wear a mask. All you need to do is wash your hands and it'll be all right. And then the next day they say, you're going to die because it's airborne. I mean, it's just, it's creating this conflict inside you that you just want to get away from it. So it's just like, well, just tell me what to do and that's what I'll do. And I'll just put my trust in you because I can't handle the stress of what this is putting me under.
Yeah, and we're under a technological dictatorship. So that means they study the data on us and then they use that data against us. All this ties into psychology. All this ties into everything that we've been talking about from secret societies and cults to, and I'm not trying to be.
Cognitive dissonance is majorly prevalent around with millennials, because talk about having two conflicting ideas. One of them is they want socialism, free college and all that, but then they think that they can protest in a democracy. So they have political splits in their mind of democratic beliefs mixed with socialistic beliefs, which are the opposite. And that's total cognitive.
Yeah, it's
the whole culture suffers from it. The whole youth is in extreme forms of that going on in their minds.
Okay, so anyway, the double speak, and then we're talking about cognitive dissonance. So that is the psychological nature of what occurs when they create a crisis, and then through the Delphi technique and their board of experts manipulate you into their solution after the crisis. Okay, now think about how much we've been seeing our leaders on TV. We want to keep you safe. 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 Okay. They just want to keep you safe from the crisis that they themselves allowed to happen, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. And the doublespeak, I'm just going to read this definition. Any language deliberately constructed to disguise or distort its actual meaning, often by employing euphemism and ambiguity, typically used by governments or large institutions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, doublespeak, like, for example, reverses the meaning of words.
Mm-hmm.
So war is peace. Okay. War is peace. This is what they're doing to us on a regular basis. They're using this tactic
Trump
on the
does
American
this constantly. Trump does doublespeak constantly.
constant.
Like, it's everything out of his mouth is like the opposite of what it actually means. It seems like.
So look at this, guys, right here, doublespeak. You can look it up. It's a language that deliberately obscures and disguises and distorts and reverses the meaning of words even. Doublespeak may take the form of euphemisms and so on. So, I mean, it's just amazing how much we see this, like, in the media.
Well, it's good. It's good to just learn these things, learn these particular techniques and the psychology behind these things and everything, and then watch news and then look around you, and you'll just. It's so obvious, guys. That's why I'm just trying to impress upon you that you need to learn about these things, because then you can actually start to wake up to what they're doing to you on a consistent basis. I mean, it's so consistent, you'll just be in disbelief that it's just bombarding you.
Yeah, I mean, and if people take the time, I mean, yeah, it sounds crazy, might use words and language that people might not understand at first, or they might get intimidated because of that, or whatever it might be. But, like, just know, if you stick with it and just, look at the information, like, it's right in plain sight, and it's so overwhelming, the amount of facts and evidence showing
Yes.
where the agenda is going. We've got their declared statements over history since the 1600s. We were showing the other day, like, quotes from the 1600s. Like, so this is a long-term plan, Joe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a long-term plan.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to say, while Joe was talking about all that before, Obama gives himself control over all communication systems in America. And I'm not bringing up Obama all the time, but because I don't like Obama or something, or whatever, or I'm for him or something. It's like, but I know people will try to say that, but just because I'm doing that, but, because that's the level of brainwashing and stuff. But I mean, this just shows, under the executive orders, under the Patriot Act, he can do this. And this is what he's done back then. Okay. This was in 2012. Okay. And it just goes to show that we can't listen to the mainstream media. Here they want to call real people that are being abused by the government fake news. Okay. They want to call people that are being abused by the government fake news, while NDAA legalizes propaganda against innocent civilians and Americans. So who's guilty here?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, who's the one that should be cited for fake news?
Yeah. And did, like, Trump try to repeal all this NDA? I mean, he's not done anything to show that he's, like, for the people in any kind of way. He didn't repeal this. He's done nothing, guys. And it's just, it blows my mind that people can actually think that somehow Trump is on our side and he's acting for the people, and he's, playing 4D chess against these people, and that's somehow, everybody's getting ready to be arrested or whatever. I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. This is showing even back then in 2014, back here when this article was released with FEMA and Obama talking at FEMA, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about the martial law by executive order,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we've been talking about, built around national emergency. So they've been doing this. They have an invested interest to create a crisis.
Right.
Like, at one level, the prospect for war with Iran is probably an immediate justification, but the comprehensiveness of the executive order, like that of 2012 NDAA, speaks to something much deeper. President Obama's National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order of March 16th does to the country as a whole what the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act did to the Constitution in particular. Completely eviscerates any due process or judicial oversight for any action by the government deemed in the interest of national security like the NDAA, the new executive order puts the government completely above the law, which in a democracy is never supposed to happen. And by the way, we're not a democracy, we're a republic, okay? It's a little bit different here. So like a democracy is mob rule. We're not in a mob rule country, we're a democratic republic. And you just got to learn what that is and read the Federalist Papers or listen to them online or whatever and understand what the founding fathers really wanted.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point, though. I don't know at what point they've switched our language to turn us into a democracy instead of a republic. But that is a good point. We're not that democracy is just majority rule, and that's definitely not what we want. It's not.
That's why we say it's a war on language. It's a war on the truth. It's a full court press. That's Joe. Continue what you're. Yeah, I mean it's a full court.
I was just saying it's democracy is not a good thing. Everybody, if you don't. It's one thing they've, the doublespeak here again is they've turned our, calling our nation a democracy when the founding fathers of our nation said, democracy is one of the most evil governments that could be established.
We're just trying to let people know that this is like, just something to be aware of because pretty soon here we're going to lose like everything.
Yeah.
That's like.
I hate to be fatalist or whatever, but I think we've already lost it all.
Yeah, we have.
It's kind of the end game now, and if people are waking up, it's only waking up enough to get to save your own soul, kind of thing. Because I don't know, I don't have any solutions as far as what to do to stop these tyrants at this point, but.
What we can do though is pray, we are in a spiritual war. We are in a spiritual battle. And, Joe, really inspires me to pray too. And we feed each other information. That's another thing you guys can do, just to really find, and I really like contending for truth because Scott does a great job on putting together a prayer list, basically at the end of his PDFs, which is good. And just reading through it once a week, and just seeing what the prayer list is so you can get it down because a lot of the things that are on that list they still exist because we're in the process of a takeover. Okay, so that's why you need to continually pray against these things.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I don't mean to be fatalistic. The Lord God is still in control, and it's going to be. But I just know the Bible, and I know the end times are upon us, and I know what the Bible says, and it doesn't really talk much about the church having a comeback or whatever. So but definitely the Lord is in control, and we need to continue in prayer always, as Paul says, to pray continually and to never stop that. But like I say, it's more now at this point you need to wake up to save your own soul because they want to take your soul. That's
that's right. And they're coming for it, and it's biblical. Revelation 18, trafficking in the souls of men. And Joe's right 100%. They want access to your thoughts. They want to tell you what to think, what to feel, and just the whole works. And that's why we don't like this system because nobody's going to like this system. And they're not going to, if you have family members that you love nowadays, they make up a test at the CDC and then it's a test that gives immediate results now. And those immediate results come back. And let's say a sheriff comes to your door and wants to test you and those immediate results come back and you have come up with COVID-19, you're going to be taken. They can just take you away and quarantine you, at a facility,
And if not that, then you're a terrorist. And if not that, you're a drug dealer or whatever.
Or you're
just have all these different things they could just put on you, and they do it all the time. So
all the time with everything. And that's why Joe was awesome for bringing up the point yesterday about the war on terror and the war on drugs and the wars that they create all along the way.
People hear that all the time. Our president is now considers himself a wartime president. These wars, when they talk about that, it's real war. They're really declaring war. It's not just like a term they're using. They're doing that to put these types of actions, to put these bills into action because they're declaring a real war.
Mm-hmm. No, that's right. They are, and it is a declared war. We've shown the documents even of what this new war entails. And we've shown the patents and the type of technology and weaponry that they want to use in this new war. and it's a fourth generational weapons, they call it, and fourth generational warfare, which involves a war against the truth, a war against your mind. And that's what we're here for. We're trying to say that there's not a lot of time left and to stop messing around and like really give your life to Christ, because there's not a lot of time left.
Amen.
And, you know, there's only going to be, Joe, I talk to people all the time back in the day that, you know, I'd go visit people in the hospital that were dying from alcoholism, you know, dying from a liver failure and stuff like that. And just even on their deathbeds, you know, you'd think that maybe if somebody came in and talked to them about Jesus, that they would maybe listen. But I'm telling you, bro, like, even in that condition, like the guy put his fist up like this and yelled through his tubes, "Don't talk to me about Jesus," you know? And I literally walked out of the room, and that same hour he passed away.
Man.
And it was just sad, because I've seen that so many times, Joe, where people deny the Lord, and it goes to fit with Revelation. It goes to fit with Revelation, where that even when these sore plagues and judgments and everything else are pouring out on the world, they'll still not repent. They still will refuse. It talks about in the book of Revelation. And it's almost like they still will shake their hands, shake their fists at God.
Yeah, the more, and the more that's poured upon them, you know, the more they you know, blaspheme the Lord. It says,
the more angry,
they blaspheme the Lord. And absolutely, that's why I say, you know, it's just you know, you got to give your life over to the Lord Jesus, because He's your only salvation. And waking up to these kind of things hopefully will make you understand that you are out of time, and you need to get into the Bible. You need to learn the gospel before it's too late, because I don't know that saving our nation is an option anymore. So that's why I talk about, you know.
And it's not time to play religion, you know. It's not time to play religion. It's not time to get dressed up and go to church on Sunday. That shouldn't be the emphasis. The emphasis should be, like Joe's saying, like, get in the Word. Still, to this day, you should be doing that, man, because it really does help with discernment, with having discernment, because we need to be able to test the spirits. And to test what we're hearing, test what we're seeing. Okay, that's the way of the Christian life. And like, you know, so like when people that aren't even born again or don't have the Spirit of God really in them, and they, you know, you come to them and try to express the truth, it's really hard, because, you know, you're going to get a lot of resistance and a lot of opposition, you know, I think. And
well, yeah, sure, because they're
the nature of it,
probably at this point.
They're probably demon possessed. I know, dude. I know. I had to put these eye drops in because my nose was going crazy. Hey, Erica, you're on camera. Hey, you should wave next time you're on camera. Okay, so just really quick though, I just wanted to finish this really quick because you have to go. So even as in 2012, NDAA was rooted in the Patriot Act and the various executive orders and congressional bills that ensued to broaden executive power in the war on terror. Okay, so the new executive order is rooted in the Defense Production Act of 1950, which gave the government powers to mobilize national resources in the event of national emergencies. Except now, virtually every aspect of American life falls under ultimate unchallengeable government control to be exercised by the president as he and his secretaries at their discretion, dude. Okay, so and then just really quick, the 2012 NDAA deemed the United States a battlefield. So here we can see Battlefield America, right? The whole entire project, the whole entire white paper that was written, Battlefield America. You can look it up. You can see if you Google that. But as Senator Lindsey Graham put it, and gave the president and his agents the right to seize and arrest any U.S. citizen, detain them indefinitely. And we're hearing about that today with the virus. You know, we're hearing about different countries detaining people indefinitely, and you know they have legal power now under the Patriot Act to do that. So without charge or trial, okay, or do so only on suspicion, guys. Okay, so don't cite me when I say that. For the last 6 years, I've been followed around and harassed by these people, and like literally, you know. But suspicion is maybe having camping gear in your car. That might be suspicious, and you might, who knows, but all we know is that they define what that is. always, okay, and
Mm-hmm.
then selectively enforce. Okay, so without any judicial oversight or due process, the new executive order states that the president and his secretaries have the authority to commandeer all U.S. domestic resources, including food. Okay, now think about the grocery stores. Think about all this stuff. And you're telling me that these people aren't aware of what's going on before it happens. And you're trying to tell me that, like they have huge roundtable groups where they meet together and discuss doing this very thing to deliberately implode things. Okay. And of course they know. So, I mean, of course they know. So, but anyways, this goes on, and I'm not going to read it all, but this is just very important to know uh, about the control that's given under the executive orders and how the crisis puts us in a state of national emergency. How convenient.
Mm-hmm.
And how we have a history of communist governments creating crises for their populations. And I'm just going to end with that. God bless you guys. And Joe, do you want to say any last words, man?
I would just say, to leave people with, it's a lot of bad news, I understand, and it's intimidating. But there are resources that I just want to keep pointing people to. Deborah Tavares at Stop the Crime is a very good website. Check out that. I mean, she does an excellent job of putting all the articles and all the white papers, all these things together in PDFs so that you can look at them yourself. I mean, it's a huge website. She's got all kinds of stuff, so she's very good at that, as well as Scott Johnson at Contending for Truth. Go check him out. He at least will encourage you more in the Lord to pray about these things, and he has a lot of resources as well in his PDFs. You can, click on things, and he does excellent PDFs where you can just click on it and go to the articles and the stuff that he's reading and getting the information from. It's all out in the open, but it just makes it faster and makes it easy to find that way, as well as while he's doing that, he does a really good job of encouraging you, in the Lord and in prayer and everything. So just wanted to say
And
that.
Joe, do you want to mention another website too? That other the BitChute one?
The Moment of Truth?
Yeah.
Website? Yeah, Moment of Truth, which is probably one of the places this video will be appearing. But we're on BitChute as Moment of Truth. We're on YouTube as Another Moment of Truth, as well as Moment of Truth. We've got a couple sites, as well as in, what else are we on?
What's the site like, Joe? What is the content? Can you kind of talk about that really quick, just like generally?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, yeah, John breaks down the gospel like really well. We have a lot of videos on there, as well as getting into other subjects. But I'd really encourage people to check out the gospel videos on there that just are showing you the Bible and showing you the real depth that the gospel is meant to be understood at, and just check that out, as well as there's a good video on psychology and all these other things, some other subjects that we did talk about, but yeah.
Yep, this is a real war, folks. Stay prayed up, and until next time, God bless.
All right.